Okay, this is day 7. Day 7, direct and inverse proportion higher. First question then, we have 4 graphs. The type of proportionality, that symbol there should be that fish symbol. Y is proportional to x is the straight line. Okay, as one goes up, the other goes up at the same rate. So the straight line, y equals x if you wanted, y equals kx. Y is proportional to x, so that's the straight line. X squared is the U shape, and in this case, the U shape, half of the U shape is seen in D. So usually x squared is that because it's only the positive values. That one is D. We should know the 1 over x. 1 over x is C. Always looks like that. So the square root is, as the numbers get bigger, the square root gets a bit smaller. So the square root by default is A. Okay. Here are 4 graphs. We can see 2 of these again. So graph B is the inverse, that's the 1 over x. Inverse, so that is B. And we can see C again, this was the square root of x. Square root, yep, so there it is, that is C. The exponential is D, so this is D, and this point here is generally 1. So, and you note the graph goes up very quickly. And finally, this is a trig graph, possibly the sine of x. So that one's anything curved like that, or cyclic like that is a trig. Okay. Right, there's a standard way of writing things. Always be careful with these questions that you're doing the right thing. First of all, h is inversely proportional to p. You might not do this. If you use the proportion symbol like this, it's 1 over. However, a lot of you remember we're using k. H equals k over p. So when it's inverse, it's k divide by. With the when you've got 2 proportion things going on, probably you wouldn't use k again. It doesn't really matter, but in this case, I'm going to use m. Just because the k's could be confused. Some people might do a capital K, depending, they might do a small k like that. So I'm going to use m in this case, just so that there's no confusion. P is directly proportional to the square root of t, which is like this, and that means that P equals K. Oh, no, not K. He talked about M and then he's forgotten it. So in this case, the other value in this, which I've called M, because these 2 values will be different, and it's times by when it's direct. Given that h equals 10 and t equals 144, when p equals 6, find a formula for h in terms of t. So the first thing I want to find is the value of k. So I'm told that h is 10. I got k, and I'm told the value of p is 6. If I times by 6 times by 6, then k equals 60. Okay. So what I get is h equals 60 over p. Okay. Then what I'm told is that p equals m times by the square root of t. So p in this case is 6, and 6 equals 10 times by the square root of 144. 144. Well, 6 equals m times by square root of 144 is 12. If I divide by the 12, m equals 0.5. So what I've got is p equals 0.5 times by the square root of t. What I've now got to do is substitute that into that because it wants h in terms of t. So if I put that over here, h equals 60 over 0.5 square root t. Now, that looks okay, however, nobody likes this 0.5. So to get rid of the 0.5, I just times by 2 times by 2. It's an equivalent fraction, and h equals 120 over the square root of t, and that is it. Great. Next question. Y is inversely proportional to d squared when d equals 10, y equals 4. D is directly proportional to x squared when x equals 2, d equals 24. Formula for y in terms of x, give your answer in its simplest form. Very similar to the last one. So first of all, y inversely is 1 over d squared. However, it's likely you're just going to go k over d squared. And then we'll sub everything in. So y is 4, k over d is 10, 10 squared. So 10 squared is 100, so we're going to times by 100. So k equals 400. Okay, so to write that out again, y equals 400 over d squared. I'm going to use that in a minute. Now, what I've also got, so I'm going to use, so d is directly proportional to x squared. I'm going to use m again, so d equals m times x squared. D equals 24 equals m, and x is 2, 2 squared. 2 squared is 4, divide by 4, so m equals 6. So d equals 6 times by x squared. Okay. If I then substitute that into there, got to be careful. So I've got y equals 400 over 6x squared all squared. Okay. And if I was to square all of that, I'd have 400 over 6 squared is 36, and that'd be x to the power of 4. Okay. Somebody might square root all of this. No, could we simplify it? Yeah, we could simplify it because 4 goes into that and that, so that's 100 over 9x to the 4. So no, we're not going to square it, but what we do is we can simplify by dividing by 4. Okay, next question. The table shows a set of values for x and y. Y is inversely proportional to the square of x. Find an equation for y in terms of x. So y, what does that? Y is inversely proportional to x squared, so y equals k over x squared. In this case, you know, all I really need to do is just find some values that work, and the nice value here is this one, so I'm just going to say that 9 equals k over 1 squared. If I times by 1, because that's what 1 squared is, k equals 9. So y equals 9 over x squared. If you tried a value like this one here, y is 1, and that 9 is over 3 squared. Sorry, just 3 squared, and that is 9 divided 3 squared is 9, 1, so that just shows it. So that's the answer there. Find the positive value of x when y equals 16. So what we've got, 16 equals 9 over x squared. I would use this little cross multiply thing that I would have shown people before, and that is x squared equals 9 over 16. To get rid of the squared, I square root, and the square root is square root of 9 is 3, square root of 16 is 4. The reason why they said positive value is because this could be negative as well, because the square root is positive, negative, but the answer in this case is just 3/4. Right, y is inversely proportional to the square of x. Y equals 8 when x equals 2.5. Find the negative value of x when y equals 8 over 9. So y 1 over square of x. You don't have to do that as long as you've got this thing here. Get that value of k. Y is 8, k, and then we've got 2.5 squared. 2.5 squared is actually 6.25. So I times this by 6.25. If you had a calculator, you could work that out. I just so happen to know that. And that means that k equals this 8. 8 times 6 is 48. 8/4 are 2. So that literally is just 50. Yep. So what I've got is y equals 50 over x squared. Find the negative value of x when y equals 8 over 9. So what we've got is we've got 8 over 9 equals 50 over x squared. Now, for me, I would swap those over, move that to there, so I get x squared equals 50 times by 9 divided by 8. And what that gives me is x squared, 50 times by 9 is 450 over 8. You might look at that and think that's a bit strange, but however, I can simplify that, and that gives me 225 because I'm dividing by 2 over 4. It's not so strange now, because if I square root that and square root that, you should see the square root of 225 is 15, the square root of 4 is 2. So the answer is negative 15 over 2. Remembering that positive and negative for a square root. So in this case, the negative value of x is minus 15 over 2. The positive value of x would just be 15 over 2. Y is inversely proportional to x cubed. So y fish 1 over x cubed. Y equals k over x cubed. Y equals 44 when x equals a. Show that y equals 5.5 when x equals 2a. So let's just trust it. So we've got 44 equals k over a cubed. What I would do is times by a cubed times by a cubed. So a cubed, so k equals 44a cubed. So y equals 44a cubed over x cubed, okay? So don't just write down what you've got. Don't start doing anything crazy. Now we just have to be careful. So now we're subbing in, show that y equals 5.5 when x equals 2a. So what I'm going to do is substitute 2a in. So y equals 44a. Sorry, chat does this every now and again. A cubed over, and remember we're substituting in, and so we've got to have it in brackets. Now, 44a cubed. 2a cubed is 2a times 2a times 2a, which is 8a cubed. So I'm actually dividing by 8a cubed. What I can then see is the a cubes cancel each other out. So I'm doing 44 divided by 8. Well, that is, if I divide by 4, divide by 4 gives me 11 over 2. So 11 over 2 is 5.5. And there we go. That's the answer. Fraction 1, y is directly proportional to the cube root of x. So y, cube root of x, so y equals k times cube root of x. Sorry, the iPad slipped. Y equals 1 and 1/6 when x equals 8. Find the value of y when x equals 64. But as soon as I see this 1 and 1/6, I'm going to change it. So that is, so 1 and 1/6, 6 times 1 is 6 plus 1, so that is 7 over 6. So I'm going to have this as a fraction, so I've got 7 over 6 equals k times by the cube root of 8. Now the cube root of 8 is 2, and what I'm doing, so I'm dividing by 2, so I've got to divide this by 2, which is actually the same as times in by a half. So what I've got here is 7 over 12. Yeah, because that's the same as times in by a half. So I've got 7 over 12 equals k. So y equals 7 over 12 times by the cube root of x. Okay. Now, find the value of y when x equals 64. So what we've got is y equals 7 over 12 times by the cube root of 64. Now the cube root of 64 is 4, yeah? And then the 4 and the 12 will cancel down to 1 and 3. So y just equals 7 times 1, which is 7 divided by 3, which is 7 over 3. Okay. And then what we got here, y is inversely proportional to the cube of u, very similar to the last one. 1 over u cubed, t equals k over u cubed. When u equals 5, t equals 0.0096, so 0.0096 equals k over 5 cubed. I've got to get my calculator for this. I do know that 5 cubed is 125, or I could just times by 5 cubed. And so what I've got here is 0.0096 times by 125 or 5 cubed, which gives me 6 over 5 or 1.2. Okay, so t equals 1.2 over u cubed. Find the value of u when t equals 0.15. So 0.15 equals 1.2 divided by u cubed. I do that little cross multiply thing, so I get u cubed equals 1.2 divided by 0.15. I think you'll find that if you do that, if I multiply these both by 100 to scale them up, that would be 120 over 15, and that is in fact 8. If I do the cube root and the cube root, u equals 2, because the cube root of 8 is 2. Quite a few of these. P is inversely proportional to the square root of m. P equals 10 when m equals a quarter. Work out the value of m when p equals 2. So P equals K over, because it's inverse, I'll leave the fish, K square root of m. 10 equals, now be careful with this, we've got K over the square root of a quarter. Okay, now what that is the square root of a quarter is actually a half. So if I write this out, the square root of 1 is 1, the square root of 4 is 2. So what I've got is K divided by a half. Now what you might say is you might prefer it as 0.5, so I'm going to use 0.5. I've got a times by 0.5, and just be careful here, 10 times 0.5 is 5, so K equals 5. So what we've got, P equals 5 over the square root of m. Find the value of m when P equals 2. So 2 equals 5 over square root of m. I'm going to do that little crossover thing. So the square root of m equals 5 over 2. To get rid of the square root, I square, and so m equals 5 squared is 25, 2 squared is 4. Okay, I'd leave it like that. If you wanted to write that down as 6.25, good for you. Each graph shows either direct proportion or inverse proportion. Here are 5 graphs. The table shows 5 equations. Right. This one is 1 over x, or k over x. This is y, so y equals something like that. This is y equals x. We saw earlier this is the square root of x. We know that this is probably x squared, and this one is x cubed. So k times x cubed, that is e. Square root of x is c. The one with the squared is d. Divide by x is a. And times by x, just x on its own, is b. Okay. Quite easy that. Last question. Y is inversely proportional to the square of x. Y equals 1 when x equals 10. Find the value of y when x equals 5. Non-calculator. So y fish 1 over x squared. It's 1 over because it's inverse. Y equals k over x squared. Y is 1 when x is 10. So I've got to divide by 100, so I'm going to times by 100, times by 100. So k equals 100. So y equals 100 over x squared. Find the value of y when x equals 5. Y equals 100 divided by 5 squared, which is 100 over 25, which is 4. There we go. Good. That's the last.